Today on CityCast Denver, Sam Tallent has been everywhere, man. But the comedian always manages to find his way home to Colorado. I've known Sam since he was deep in the Denver DIY comedy trenches more than a decade ago. And this week, he headlines a sold-out show at Comedy Works. I caught up with the comedian, writer, and musician to talk about what makes the stand-up scene here so dang special. Today is Wednesday, April 12th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Sam Tallent, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to be here, Bree. I've known you forever, and I haven't talked to you forever, and this is cool.
This is really cool. We've crossed paths so many times over the years in various creative endeavors, so I'm really stoked that we get to just hang out and talk. I'm talking to you today not because we used to play music, but because you're coming through Denver. You're coming through your home to do a sold-out show at Comedy Works. And it just had me thinking, Sam, is there a place in Denver where you distinctly remember bombing a set for the first time?
Oh, Old Curtis Street.
Oh,
There was like some event, I think Guns N' Rosa Parks and Knife Fight were playing, which I think were like the Stone Twins. Like they were in one of those bands from Dirty Few.
Yeah.
And they had like me do stand-up in between. And it was like, they were all like scooter boys and like moped dudes. They were like big bicycle people. And I remember making fun of their bicycles. And then they turned on me. And I remember like being outside, being wasted at Old Curtis Street and having 2 bottles of mustard. And I remember just like bombing so hard. And then this is not nice. And I'm sure I'm outing myself to some old heads now. But if your bike got squirted with mustard in front of Old Curtis Street in like 2011, it was me. And it was because I bombed so aggressively hard on stage for all the coolest kids in Denver. I mean, this was a time when it was very important to me to like be perceived as cool, or at least cool adjacent. And I bombed and I squirted everyone's bikes with the most stainable condiment there is.
Well, but I do, to be fair, I remember I'd booked some things like this too, where you have bands and comedians, and if you do band, comedian, band, it like kills the mood. It just does not work.
And then like I remember I did Rhino one time with Picture Plane. And I would just bomb so hard. And when you're bombing in a concrete room, you can hear how much people are not laughing. You know what I mean? Like it's deafening silence. It was either Glob or Rhino. And I was just like, I was like punch drunk. I was like, what's going on?
I know. I think I remember that show because I feel like even if you did bomb at Rhinoceropolis, you did some great crowd work. Because I remember you made fun of some dude who was standing on the wall, not laughing. I mean, it was like, you know, when you can't make those art school kids laugh, they let you know.
Oh, yeah. And it was like existential. There was like 8 girls in the crowd who I had crushes on, like it was just like, ooh, it was tough stuff. I do not miss those days. I mean, I miss everything else but those shows.
I feel you. So I guess on the other side of it, do you have a really fond memory of a place in Denver where you first really crushed a set, where you just killed it?
Yeah, I mean, Comedy Works. I remember just the first couple times when I got like 5-minute sets there and just absolutely wailing, because there was like this terrible like poisonous masculinity with being a stand-up comedian in Denver, because the Squire Lounge, that was where we all went to prove ourselves, and Bomb Hour hosted there. So if you could win the bar tab at the Squire, you were like a maid, that was like you were getting knighted. And we would take that like chip on my shoulder, shut the fuck up and listen to me, like ethos in the Comedy Works on like Tuesdays for new talent night. And there'd be like, a 55-year-old like lawyer who was doing his first 2-minute set, and he brought like 40 people from the firm to see him. And then like, like me, Nathan Lund, like Troy Walker, just battle-hardened veterans going in there, just ripping these people in half. Yeah, so Comedy Works was where I first killed, and I'll never forget how important that was.
Well, that's an important place, too, I think, for all comedians. We know this. It is a legendary club around the country. But I wonder how you feel about it as somebody who came up in the scene here and got to do those killer sets on almost any night of the week at Comedy Works.
I'm incredibly grateful to be I don't want to say artist, but I will, to be a Denver artist. I was so grateful that we had all those great DIY spaces back in the day. I was so grateful that I was a Comedy Works comic and also like, you know, a Squire Lounge comic. That was arguably more important to me back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I really I have nothing but just wide-eyed sentimentality when I think of Comedy Works. And Wendy, you know, she's looked out for me more than, I mean, Wendy, Ben Kronberg, these are the people who looked out for me when it comes to like the industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, Wendy letting me fly the flag as a Denver comic and now going nationwide and being a Denver comedian is like, it feels really good.
And I want to clarify for folks who maybe don't know, Wendy Curtis is the person behind Comedy Works. She's
and
really
super important on the nationwide comedy stage. Like, you know, like when I'm doing Joe Rogan's club next week, I have 2 shows there, and Wendy was the first person to reach out and be like, congratulations, I'm so proud of you.
That's awesome. So she's still watching what you're doing. That's amazing.
Well, yeah, she's also watching because I sold out my show at Comedy Works like 3 weeks ahead of time.
Congratulations.
So, you know, well, thank you. But I was definitely up her ass. I was like, hey, Wendy, can I get a weekend now? I mean, come on. We're moving tickets. I didn't even use any promo codes, Bree. Like that's how quickly they moved. So yeah, she's and also like it's weird though, because I think she remembers me as like the stoned 20-year-old who was just huge and wearing like, do you remember when I went through my coveralls
Your
phase?
overalls phase, yes. I was just thinking that. I was like, that's how I picture you in that moment. You were describing in the stairwell at that show as Sam in overalls.
Overalls, yeah. Bulwark brand coveralls gave me like 8 pairs, and I wore them for like 4 years, just nonstop until the crotch wore out. I'd have to like cut vents in the armpits and stuff so like I could breathe. I just reeked. It's amazing that any woman allowed me to be nude in front of them at all.
And then you married the most amazing woman of all. Emily is beautiful. She's a doctor. You did something right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do know I'm a good person and I'm, you know, trustworthy and loyal. So like I get why we're together. But when we met, she was not a doctor, you know.
True.
She was 20. I was 23. We were at Mouth House. Wow. You know, no one had any aspirations for ever even being allowed in a hospital at that point, you know.
That's amazing though that you met at your DIY spot, which was also your home for a long time with your sister and a lot of different folks lived there, and we played many shows there, and you wouldn't even recognize it today if you drove by it in 5 Points.
No, yeah, I was opening at the Paramount all weekend, and I was driving the other comics on the show, and I drove them all around Denver. I took them around my version of Denver, which is Colorado Boulevard to Alameda to I-25 or no, to Federal to like Bruce Randolph. Like that's like my idea of the confines of Denver.
Yeah.
And I drove them by Mouth House, and I was like, we used to have like an alligator in the bathtub here. There were like 300 people there. When the cops finally did their big sting operation there and they shut it down, I remember in disclosure for the court documents, it was revealed that they were all wearing the same Social Distortion shirt.
Yeah. And I feel like that's how people knew that they were narcs, because there were all these dudes in Social D t-shirts at the show, and we were like, who are these guys? And then they turned out to be undercover cops, which is the bummer part of this story. You know, we'd been talking about this time, you know, in the early 2010s. You're doing comedy all over Denver. I'm thinking about that versus the Denver that we know now. What do you think about the Denver comedy scene right now?
Bro, I mean, I love the Denver comedy scene right now. I think that my issue, so I've always said to people when they ask me about Denver, the Denver that I love doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But tell me if I'm wrong. You and I were both guilty of this. All right. Standing around on Brighton Boulevard back in the day, smoking cigarettes, being like, oh, Denver doesn't get any love. We don't get any shine. No one respects us. You know, they just fly over because we're not Chicago. And everything that we wanted out of Denver came true. Now everyone loves us. We have this like nationally lauded comedy and music scene. And I mean, Denver comedy is as good as it gets anywhere. There's two new clubs now. There's the Comedy Underground, run by Ben Bryant, up in that weird church on like Race and 14th.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. It's in the Althea Center
Yeah,
of like Spiritual Enlightenment or something. It's a gorgeous church, but I
right.
have seen a lot of my friends are playing or doing really awesome shows at this spot. And so this is kind of like one of those not new. I don't want to say it's new. It's been around for a while, but this is one of those spots.
Fairly new.
It's like the unlikely spot where you're going to find really great comedians.
Oh yeah, and it's all Ben Bryant. Ben Bryant's incredibly funny, and he's also like type A driven to the point where he just totally bootstrapped this comedy club out of nowhere in a place that I've walked by, I don't know, 1,000 times in my life and been like, oh, what is that? Like a Christian Science reading room? All right, move on. So yeah, Ben totally made that thing happen, and it's sold out every weekend.
Yes.
And it rules. He's doing shows upstairs now.
So these sound like kind of like not step ups, but they're definitely like maybe a more friendly, welcoming environment for newer comedians. Because I anytime anyone ever describes the Squire as this place where you really like broke in your material and learned how to be a comedian, it also sounds like total hell. Like
It was. It for sure was. And this was the old Squire, Bree. So it was like the one where there was pool tables and like actual hustlers and pimps and like drug dealers were there.
Yeah.
You know, like it's been Colfax still looks like pretty gnarly when you look at it outside, but like a lot of those establishments have glowed up severely.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that old Squire was like, you know, you riff with the wrong guy. I've seen people have knives pulled, guns pulled. I've seen like, you know, just brutal acts of violence in there.
Yeah.
I've also seen like, you know, I've fallen in love there. I've had trysts in the Squire, you know, it was not healthy, but this was also like, you know, in like 2009, it was a bunch of people with black lipstick and dudes who loved, you know, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. And if you can make them laugh, it was a lot like those shows at Rhino where it's like, you can get these people to laugh, you're doing something. And of course, it kind of warped your aesthetic for comedy, where it was a lot more like in your face. But yeah, well,
I think you would have opportunities to open for big comics where if you were in a city like New York, it might be a lot harder to get that opening slot versus Denver.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just like a saturation point in New York and LA. I mean, obviously, I do still think that the best comedians pound for pound come out of New York City, because you have to be a certain kind of psycho to survive in that just pressure cooker. You're walking into a buzzsaw if you move to New York. And, you know, a lot of coals turn into diamonds there, but also a lot more coals just burnt to ash. And also, like, we had all those DIY shows.
Yeah.
So, like, I remember I got to open for Kinane. I got to open for Sean Patton. I got to open for Maria Bamford, all just at the Orange Cat. And that was a huge deal to me. And, you know, you got anointed at the Squire, and then you finally got on those Grawlix, those Comico shows. And then then eventually you got on our Wednesday night show that me and Bobby and Chris and Lund ran. And it was just like, there was a lot of access to. I remember Chappelle did our show above City O City.
I was just going to say, when you guys were doing Fine Gentlemen's Club, I remember Dave Chappelle came through and did the Deer Pile with you guys.
Yeah.
So the Deer Pile was that venue above City O City that was just a literal room. It was just a room. And you got Dave Chappelle to perform at your room.
Yeah, because we were running shows at, Rockaway. Do you remember the Rockaway?
I do. It's one place where I didn't get paid and I almost fought somebody because they didn't. Yeah, they said they were going to pay us for a show.
There were just needles in the toilets all the time there.
That was a rough
an open
spot.
Air drug den. It was horrible. It was 27th or 23rd and Stout, back when that wasn't, you know, built up by high rises. So yeah, we ran our show there, and then Abby Jordan was a comic, and she found that spot above City O City, and it was just full of chairs.
Yeah, I remember
and we
that.
Went and we cleared it out, and we started running our weekly there. Yeah, and then we had Chappelle, we had Rory Scovel, we had every big comic who came through would secretly come and do our show before they headlined Comedy Works or the Improv, or they were in town for the Grawlix shows. Like, we really lucked out over there.
Yeah, but I think part of the appeal probably had to be too, they got to play a small room again. They got to do the DIY. You know what I mean? Like, there's some a level of appeal that once you reach a point, you can't go. It's really hard to go back.
Yeah, for sure. And we were also lucky because, like, all the big comics in town, like, Josh Blue is the reason the Chappelle came over. I
Yeah.
remember Josh called me and he's like, "Hey, can Chappelle do your show tonight?" And I was like, "All right, Josh, what the fuck do you want? What's going on? What are you bothering me about right now?" And he's like, "No, I'm serious. Can Chappelle do your show?" Word got out within like an hour and a half that Chappelle was coming, and there were people literally hanging out of the windows at Deer Pile that night just so they could be in that room. I mean, that room maybe fit 60. I think that night we had 150
Oh God.
people in there.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about just the energy and the nature of being able to do that at one moment in time here,
And that was before Chappelle had his
Yeah.
6 bodyguards with him at all the
Oh,
time,
way different. Yeah. I mean, he was
Yeah.
like Chappelle Show famous, but he wasn't like at the level that he's at now. This has been so fun, Sam. Your show is sold out, which is incredible. Congratulations. But if folks...
Are we done? Is that it?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
my
sorry.
God.
I know we have a short
That's
show.
okay.
I'm so proud to know you. I'm just so proud of everything that you do. And I'm just so proud that you're from here and that you really care about the other
Bree,
artists
thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, I really appreciate that, dude. Thank you for having me on. I love talking about Denver and just talking to you.
I love talking about Denver, and I love talking to you too, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bree.
And here's what else Denverites are talking about: the pandemic. In 2020, as the world first grappled with COVID-19, the shelter system proved to be unsafe for keeping people healthy. In response, the city of Denver contracted with area hotels to serve as, quote, protective action hotels for unhoused people with health issues. Denverite reports that the city's housing contract with Aloft, a downtown lodging provider, ends on April 27th as federal funding runs out, leaving current residents concerned they will have nowhere to go. The Department of Housing Stability says they have found housing for dozens of soon-to-be displaced Denverites and is working on options for others still staying at Aloft. Homeless advocacy group House Keys Action Network says that many of the residents are concerned about stability and care for ongoing health issues and fear they may end up back in shelters or on the streets. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell Dave Chappelle about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, by texting Denver to 66866. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye. There's this Usher song, My Way, that I love. And there's a part where he says, your girlfriend's paging me. And then it's like, boop, boop, boop in the song. It's perfection. It's perfection for me. It's great. I know. I actually wore my pager on the front of my overalls usually at school. Show it off. Be like, yeah, I got a pager. What's up?